Hi, everybody. I need to admit something to you. So far, I've been saying that when you add a number, you should move to the right, and when you subtract a number, you should move to the left. Well, I need to come clean. That's not always true. So, if you remember, in all of the examples that we've been doing so far in the previous videos, the second number has always been a positive number. If you don't believe me, go back to those other videos and you can see for yourself. Sometimes I gave you a negative number for the first number, but that second number was always a positive number. So in this video, we're going to see some examples of what to do when the second number is a negative number. Now, here are the rules for adding and subtracting negatives. When you add a negative, you move to the left. And when you subtract a negative, you move to the right. Let's do some examples down here. So this first example, we have simply 7 plus 2. So this 2 over here is a positive 2, just like we've been doing. So this is going to be very familiar for you. So we're just going to put our We're going to put a dot on the first number 7. And then we are going to move to the right 2 spaces. 1, 2. So 7 plus 2 is 9. No big surprise there, right? But what happens when the second number is a negative number? So here we have 7 plus negative 2, not positive 2 like it was over here. Now, when we add a negative, we move to the left. So we're still going to start at 7, but this time we're going to go to the left 2 spaces, 1, 2. So 7 plus negative 2 is actually equal to 5. Let's look at another problem, 7 minus 2. Now here, this 2 is a positive 2. So don't get confused because you see this symbol in front of it. This symbol in this context means subtraction. So we're starting at 7 and we are subtracting positive 2. So this is just like what we've been doing in other videos. I start here and I move to the left 2 spaces, 1, 2, and I get 5. On the other hand, if I'm subtracting negative 2, well, again, let's look at the rule. When you subtract a negative, you move to the right. So I'm going to start at 7, but this time I'm going to move to the right 2 spaces, 1, 2, and I get 9. All right, now before I told you that the operation tells you which direction to move. But now after going through these examples, you should see that it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's not only the operation that we have to look at. We definitely have to look at the operation, but we also have to look at what type of number we have. Okay, so we have to think of both the operation and the type of number that comes after that operation. We have to think of those things both at the same time. Okay, so if we are adding a positive number, we move to the right, but if we're adding a negative number, we move to the left. And if we're subtracting a positive number, we move to the left, but if we are subtracting a negative number, we move to the right. So it's not only the operation that you have to think of, it's the operation and also what kind of number is happening right after that operation, right? That second number that we have over here. All right. Now, if you take a look at these number lines, you'll notice that they sort of come in pairs, right? Some of them are the same. And so just look at it for a second and see which pairs go together, which number lines look exactly the same. You can pause the video for a second, and you should be able to see that this number line over here, this picture that we drew where we started at 7 and then we moved 2 spaces to the left, that's exactly the same thing as what happened at here. We started at 7 and moved 2 spaces to the left. So, in other words, adding -2 is exactly the same thing as subtracting +2. And another pair that goes together is these two, or are these two over here. You can see that in both cases, we're moving 2 spaces to the right. So it turns out that subtracting -2 is exactly the same thing as adding +2. And that's why I put over here, even though I didn't read it before, adding a negative is like subtracting a positive, and subtracting a negative is like adding a positive. So based on which direction we're moving, and based on these rules here, we can figure out, well, we just did figure out some other rules that I like to call the rewriting rules, which really is whenever you see plus negative together, you can just rewrite that as subtraction. And whenever you see minus negative, you can rewrite that as addition. So if you're adding a negative, that's the same thing as subtracting a positive. And if you're subtracting a negative, that's the same thing as adding a positive. So the last thing that I want to do in this video is just practice doing some rewriting. So for this set, we're going to rewrite the following expressions or say there's no need. So if there's no need to rewrite them, then we're just going to write no need. There's nothing to rewrite here. Okay, so for 7 plus 2, we don't have a plus symbol right next to a negative. So for this one, there is no need to rewrite this. This is just exactly the same thing that you learned in elementary school. It's just plain old 7 plus 2. On the other hand, here we have a plus right next to a negative. Okay, so if they're right next to each other, we can circle them and we can rewrite this as 7 minus 2, which just looks a little bit easier, right? Everybody knows 7 minus 2 is 5, okay? So rewriting takes a problem which looks a little bit tricky, and it just makes it a little bit simpler, right? What about 7 minus -2? Again, if we have a minus negative right next to each other, we're going to turn that into addition, because subtracting -2 is exactly the same as adding +2, right? And what about this 7 minus 2 here? There is no need to rewrite that. Okay, that's just plain old 7 minus 2, which is 5. Okay, now what about over here? So sometimes students get confused if the first number is a negative. What do we do? The answer is it doesn't matter if the first number is a negative. Okay, when we're doing the rewriting, we're just looking to see if we have a plus negative right next to each other or a minus negative right next to each other. So over here, we have a plus symbol and we have a negative here, but they're not right next to each other. So here we're going to write that there's no need to rewrite this. Okay, we would not rewrite this one. On the other hand, here we have this plus negative, so we would rewrite that. So we would have -7. Notice that this -7 is not rewritten. It stays exactly the same as it was before. But we're going to rewrite this plus negative as subtraction. Okay, so again, adding -2 is the same thing as subtracting +2. Over here, we're going to rewrite this. So nothing is going to happen to the -7, but we're going to rewrite minus negative as addition. And over here, again, even though we have these two dashes here, this, by the way, means negative and this is subtraction. But even though we have two dashes, it's not the same as this situation because, again, they're not right next to each other like they are over here and over here. So for this problem, we're going to write that there is no need to rewrite this. Okay, so I hope that made sense. Have a great day.